At least 9 people have died and 10 were injured after an explosion happened in Sabongeri area of the northwestern Kano state, Nigeria. The state government and security officials said the blast was triggered by a gas explosion. Victims have been rescued from the rubble of a building destroyed outside a primary school. Arise correspondent Nisi Gabriel had this report.
Panic and chaos in Sabongeri area of Kano state after an explosion brought down a building close to a primary school. Many people are feared dead as human parts are evacuated by officials of the Red Cross and Civil Defense Corps. I am standing on the rubble of a collapsed building in Sabongeri area of Kano state. Those living around say about 9 bodies have been recovered so far. They are angry with the state government for saying the incident that happened here was as a result of a gas explosion. Speaking exclusively to Arise News, they say it was a bomb blast.
The incident that happened was to take the life of this student, but God intervened. It was a suicide bomber that came, and I want you to pass this information across the way I'm telling you now. It was not gas explosion. It was a suicide bomber. We saw him. So that is a fact, but God intervened.
After our assembly in the morning, I was in a class teaching the students, and all of a sudden we heard a sound, and on reaching here, we saw the explosion and some dead bodies around. And what we are hearing in the news now, that the government are saying is a gas explosion, while what we saw and the sound we hear is a bomb blast sound. As an engineering student, I know what is gas and I know what is bomb explosion. So I don't see the reason why the government will be telling us that this is a gas explosion where we know the truth. So I don't know if they are trying to cover their shame or trying to cover their insecurity in the state.
The Kano State Commissioner of Police visited the scene to assess the level of damage. He said the explosion was triggered by a gas cylinder and not a bomb.
That is the EOD personnel. You know, if you can see, they said it was an explosion, bomb explosion, but sincerely, it's not bomb explosion. It's gas cylinder explosion.
After concluding the search and rescue operation, the National Emergency Management Agency said that the 9 bodies have been deposited in the morgue at the Armed Forces Hospital, Kano State. NEMA officials insist that the blast was triggered by a gas explosion.
Those people are no experts. And you know, there was EOD of the police department, that is the police section. They made the investigations, they investigated the place very well, and they found evidence that shows that it's a gas explosion. Because it's a welding shop. Are they debunking that place is a welding shop? They are not.
Residents of Sabongeri area are calling on the state government to thoroughly investigate the cause of the explosion. But the state government is cautioning citizens to desist from spreading false news and remain calm. Nisi Gabriel.
Right, we're now being joined by Arise correspondent Nisi Gabriel in Kano. Nisi, great to have you on a very sad morning, I should say. Nisi, if you're there and you can hear my voice, would like to ask what really is going on. We're hearing a bomb explosion, we're hearing a gas explosion.
Good morning, Rufai, and good morning to the rest of the team. Well, at the scene of the incident, and I have a lot of onlookers around who they are here to assess the level of the extent of damage. Well, to answer your question succinctly, there are 2 sides to the story, and I'll try as much as I can to be objective and to report both sides of the story. Residents of Sabongeri area in Kano State are saying that what happened there was not as a result of a gas explosion, that it was actually a bomb blast. And some eyewitness said they actually saw the suicide bomber coming here with the explosive device before it was triggered off. Meanwhile, on the other parts, the other story, the state government, the Kano State government are saying that it was not a bomb blast, that it was indeed the explosion was triggered by a gas cylinder. Well, they are attributing this explosion to a welder shop that is just right beside me here. If my cameraman can pan, there's a welding shop here. But residents of Sabongeri area are saying that the welder uses electricity to work. So there's no how the explosion that happened here yesterday can be as a result of his cylinder. So there, as of yesterday, there were a lot of apprehension, tension in Sabongeri area. The Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, happens to be in Kano State to visit APC delegates. And he visited the scene of the incident as well to assess the extent of damage and to commiserate with families of those that lost their life. But residents of Sabongeri area are maintaining and are insisting that the explosion that happened here was not triggered by a gas cylinder.
Right, so where exactly is this confusion coming from? Because it's really important to establish the facts as you've reported them, but the people on the scene don't seem convinced exactly what is causing this.
Well, the people of Sabongeri area in Kano State, as you can see around me, they are gathered around here. I can see parents of pupils coming to the school to pick up the belongings of their child, of their ward. But the people of Sabongeri are convinced without reasonable doubt that what the state government is telling them is not the truth. So the onus is on the state government to investigate further, because I'm standing at the scene of the incident, and from what I can see, the extent of damage is massive. If you look down the street, from where I'm standing down to the street, there's also a church located down there. The explosion that happened there affected all buildings on this street. It affected the primary school beside me here, and fortunately for the primary school, no pupil lost their life. But on this side of, behind me are rubbles of the collapsed building. 9 persons lost their life and 9 bodies have been recovered so far. So residents of Sabongeri are urging and they're calling the state government not to sweep this under the carpet. They ought to investigate further and unravel the incident or what led to this unfortunate incident.
Okay, obviously there are many sides to this story, and it looks like some people are alleging a cover-up. As the reporter on the ground, do you think that there is a cover-up? Especially as the state government is not talking about a welding shop. The state government is talking about an animal feed store. That animal feed store, do they have gas cylinders in that animal feed store? And where is that animal feed store that is mentioned in the state government's statement located? The state government also says that investigations are ongoing in the last 24 hours. Has there been any further statement from the state government in terms of what they may have been able to find in the last how many hours?
Dr. Abati, starting with the latter, the state government came out to say that they found some substance, chemical substance, and other substance that can actually lead to this explosion in the welding shop. So they are saying that further investigation will be done. But from what the Commissioner of Police, the Kano State Commissioner of Police did say yesterday, he concluded that experts came to the scene, and from the analysis and from what the experts are telling them, what happened there was a gas explosion. Well, the animal field, I think the animal field collapsed too. It was on the down floor of this building. This building was a one-story building, and the owner, I spoke to the owner of this building yesterday, and he was in tears, and because he has lost virtually everything he has. He occupies the up part of the building, while the down part of the building, he put it on rent, and the animal feed store was located on the down part of the building, and everything went down. But according to him, from what he told me exclusively, he said that those that occupy the down floor of the building, they don't use gas cylinder. So he was surprised when he heard that the explosion that happened there was triggered by a gas explosion. Well, from what I can see around me, the people of Sabongeri area are dissatisfied, and they totally disagree with the stance of the Kano State government. So more needs to be done to unravel what led to this incident, this unfortunate incident, because from what many of the residents here are saying, they are saying that the state government is trying to sweep this under the carpet. And from what the state government is saying, the state government is urging residents to keep calm and they should desist from spreading false news as they are doing all they can to get to the bottom of this situation.
Right. Nisi, I just want to talk about the casualties. What are we hearing? Is it just only 9 people or some other people? Okay.
No, carry on.
Or some other people have been, dug out of the rubble. What is it like with the casualties? What is it like with the survivors? How many survivors do we have?
Well, it's really a sad incident because it's a sad narrative. Because yesterday when I came here, I could see people shedding tears, human parts being evacuated, and it's just so sad. So far, just 9 persons. 9 bodies have been recovered from the rubble behind me, but residents here are also saying that they believe that more persons are still covered under the rubble. And we also gathered that 10 persons sustained injury, and immediately the Red Cross and other emergency team came here yesterday. They moved them to the Armed Forces Hospital in Kano State. And from what I gathered also, 2 persons out of the 10 have been discharged from the hospital. And just a few minutes before I came on air, I saw a woman, a lady with her child. She told me that she's a teacher in this nursery school, and she was there with her little baby when this explosion happened. And from what I could see, the body of the little baby has been totally damaged. A lot of scars, blister, gory scene, and it's just unfortunate and I asked her why is she not in the hospital. She said they were discharged yesterday and she quickly rushed down here to pick some of her belongings. So it's really a sad incident. And from what the Kano State government is saying, they are saying that they will compensate families of those who lost, whose loved ones died under the rubble here. And they are also saying that they will compensate the injured victims. So it's left for us to follow up on this story to see if actually they will compensate these families.
Well, thank you very much, Nisi Gabriel. But I don't think it's about, just about compensation. It's about, what we deal with in Nigeria, practically now on a daily basis, on a recurrent basis. The fact that nobody is safe anywhere, either on the highways or people living in their homes or people just going about normal businesses, as it's done in other parts of the world. The most unfortunate part of this is that it puts us, journalists, in a difficult situation. Thank you very much, Nisi Gabriel. We'll remain in touch with you so that we can get more updates.
All right. That's all on News Headline. We take a short break. When we return, we have Rotus, we have Michael, we have Aaron to give us updates on Africa, global business and sport activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. For global business updates, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. A very hawkish Fed and also record inflation figures in the UK. That's really the main stories this morning. But we'll start with geographically and time-wise with Asia Pacific, and all fairly mixed there. Japan's economy shrank less than expected in the first quarter. The Nikkei rose very, very slightly as a result of that. And elsewhere, mainland China stocks slipped a little. Hang Seng also declined slightly. China has been helping its tech market actually by signaling at least it might be easing its tech crackdown. There's going to be no U-turn as far as they're concerned, but analysts say so no major reversal of policy, but it's likely that there will be a slight easing of the hard line that they've taken about that. And just on that, China's e-commerce giant JD has beaten estimates this morning, but still slowing down and showing the problems with that COVID lockdown, which is actually hitting China. And also the authorities there are diverting funds from infrastructure projects and from poverty projects to COVID mass testing, which is still taking place there. We were talking yesterday about India banning its food exports. It's not the only one. Now, clearly, the war's triggered a huge increase in wheat prices, with Russia and Ukraine being the major providers of the commodity. India's banned its wheat exports. It's triggered a huge spike in wheat prices as well. But India's not alone. As well as Russia and Ukraine, Egypt, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, and Serbia have also been banning wheat exports as well. And add to that the problems with fertilizer, and the only way for food prices is clearly upwards. As far as the US is concerned, retail sales numbers not too bad given what's going on there. But Jay Powell, there he is, was very, very hawkish about interest rates, and he says if it means moving broadly understood levels of neutral. What he means by that, of course, is interest rates at about 2%, and he thinks they're going to rise a little bit more than that. If you remember, they brought their interest rate up in the second increase of 2022, inflation running at a 40-year high there. Netflix has also, we're just hearing, has cut 150 US jobs as a result of people getting out of the streaming service. Elon Musk is asking the SEC to investigate Twitter. He's not convinced about what are real users and what aren't real users. We understand the SEC has been aware of these sort of slight variations, if we put it like that, in Twitter's numbers for many years. Musk has agreed to buy Twitter for $44 billion. That price may well come down. As far as the EU is concerned, now Janet Yellen, the US Treasury Secretary, has been in Germany ahead of the financial ministers G7 meeting, which starts today. She's been pushing at ways in which maybe the G7 can impose an energy price cap on Russian exports, maybe using it as a bridge to full sanctions later in the year. That's the word out of there. So then to the UK and inflation. Well, it didn't quite get to double figures, but it's there nearly 9%, fastest growth in 40 years, twice what the Bank of England was predicting a year ago. It looks like a quarter of Britons are already either skipping meals or just having smaller portions. And more than 4 in 5 people in the UK are very seriously concerned about where the economy is going over the next few months. And the Treasury Secretary, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, is being pressed even more to introduce a windfall tax on big oil and energy companies. There are the usual arguments about it. Labour lost a vote on it yesterday. However, apparently a lot of voters would actually quite like that to happen. Meanwhile, petrol retailers at the pumps are being urged, more than urged, actually told to pass on some of the price decreases that a cut in fuel duty has actually caused. And he's Kwasi Kwarteng, the business secretary, is in touch with the competition regulators about that. And finally, a note on oil. Overnight oil prices touched multi-week highs until the UK actually announced it was lifting the sanctions on, or may lift the sanctions on Venezuela, and that would actually help a great deal as far as oil is concerned. That's the global view this morning.
All right. Morning again, Michael. So my question this morning is sort of going to be like a tale of two cities. Some people are arguing that it is ill-advised to have a windfall tax when we know that the oil business has been very unstable lately. And the fact that most of these oil companies want to use this, and they will be using this windfall tax in the future, to be able to segue into renewable energy. That's the plan. We all saw BP in early 2000s under John Brown launching Beyond Petrol and the likes and projects like that. Another part is arguing that taxing the rich is a form of checking inflation. In fact, Joe Biden tweeted it in America and said, okay, we need to tax all the rich people now, the super rich now. And there were copious dossiers from the government way back in the 1940s that talked about an empirical research into the possibility of taxing the rich to be able to hedge inflation. What do you say about those two opposing views?
Well, I don't think taxing the rich has got anything to do with inflation. I think that was the point that Jeff Bezos was making yesterday, wasn't he, in that continuing spat with the White House. The reasons for inflation, nothing to do with the rich. The reasons for inflation are to do with supply chain problems, a war in Ukraine started by Russia, and the way in which countries are now beginning to clamp down on their food exports. It's got nothing to do with the rich. It's got to do with it's a prisoner of geopolitical movements. I mean, it's as simple as that. It may be that the way forward is to take a little bit from the rich, but although they command the most of the wealth, unfortunately, these kind of people can move their money around. It's very, very difficult to actually do that. As far as a windfall tax is concerned, well, all the usual rules apply to that. All the yeses and the nos apply. We've rehearsed those many, many times on this programme. But it does look as though that the voters in this country, particularly in the UK, are thinking that might not be a bad idea. They haven't really got their eye on investment and so on, although the Chancellor's still saying, Rishi Sunak is still saying to the oil companies, unless you convince me that you're going to invest in the UK, then we will impose a windfall tax. That's rather different from just saying, right, we're going to have a windfall tax. However, at some stage, he is a politician, and he is going to have to take notice of what the voters say, and there is a campaign growing for a windfall tax on large energy companies, which through no fault of their own and no constructive moves of their own are raking it in because of the rise in the oil price. So it works both ways, but taxing the rich is not the way to tackle inflation.
Well, what Rishi Sunak is saying is that even if the windfall tax is going to be introduced, it will be a one-off. And that probably will satisfy, the concerns of persons who say, well, oil prices are volatile and all of that. And probably, do you think that will strike a balance for the 8 in 10 persons in Britain reported in the voter research in Whitehall that is in the papers today, who are saying that these corporate cowboys running oil and gas companies should be made to pay more, because it's not as if Rishi Sunak is trying to go all the way. He's talking about a one-off windfall tax. Would that serve the purpose? Would that address the cost of living crisis? And how far? What should we expect? Many Tory MPs are calling for VAT cuts. They are calling for warming up the homes and making it easier for people, to buy gas or whatever and all of that. So how far is the Chancellor likely to go? That's one. As for Elon Musk, can anybody read Elon Musk's mind? What exactly is he driving at? Does he want to renegotiate the price, particularly as at the time he made the bid of over $44 billion? Since then, there has been a drop in Twitter stocks, in the value of Twitter stocks. His own company, Tesla, has also lost considerable value since then. Is it that he wants to pay a lower price, or is he even trying to just walk away and pay the termination fee of $1 billion, which may well be chicken change to him? What exactly is he driving at? Although the Twitter guys are saying that there was no pressure, there was no clause in the contract that requires him to ask for the kind of details that he's asking for with spam accounts, which he says should be over 20%, and Agrawal is saying is less than 5%, and he says no.
So what he's doing is, it's a rather public form of, I think, what you and I would call due diligence. It depends how you conduct that. If it were me, I would not be doing it like this. I don't think there's any reason for doing it in public, because although he can, and we talked about this a while ago, didn't we? He can walk away from this deal and he pays $1 billion, but it'd be much more than that, because Twitter, the current board of Twitter, even though 2 people have left it, would be quite rightly saying, hang on a second, he's been manipulating the share price. He said he'd buy it at this, the share price isn't that, so he's not going to buy it at the share price he originally agreed, because of this posturing at the moment. And the latest is to get in touch with the SEC and say to them, come on boys, you've been worried about this for years, now tell me, what exactly is the level of false accounts, etc., etc.? What is the true level of Twitter and its accounts? And of course, in all this, as we always, financial journalists always say, follow the money. How on earth, this is my question, not his question, how on earth is it going to make money? What's the business plan? So there's a whole lot that we don't know about it. I think there's a lot of posturing absolutely going on. As far as the windfall tax is concerned, I stick with what I said originally about this, that I think if the voters start to call for it, it'll probably happen. They're not interested in the long-term view. They're interested in bills now and how they're going to feed and heat their families over the winter and, in fact, over the summer as well. And if it becomes a voter concern, then politicians will have to listen to that. I don't think it solve anything. And you know, the oil companies quite rightly point to the fact that the oil price is very volatile, that if they're extracting fossil fuels from the places get more and more difficult, that means more investment. And secondly, they are trying to transit from being fossil fuel companies into green energy companies. And again, you know, we've seen a lot of times people looking at those estimates and thinking, is it really going to happen within that kind of time? Do we really want to pay for this? So I think in terms of a public gesture, a windfall tax probably would be good for the voters. Whether it'll solve long-term problems, doubt it very much indeed.
What about the warm house discount from £150 to £600 that Rishi Sunak is reportedly considering? Can you give that some context? Would that actually make a difference? And what are your thoughts on Ed Miliband's rather scathing criticisms of Rishi Sunak that have been reported in this morning's papers, saying his reputation has dropped like cryptocurrency, he's been found out, and what have you? Ed Miliband would. He's a member of the shadow cabinet, obviously. But is there some truth to this? Are there Tory supporters who are also looking in askance at Rishi Sunak and his handling of the cost of living crisis?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of conservative backbenchers, you know, on the conservative benches, who are feeling a lot of pressure from their constituents, saying, "Hang on a second, what's going on here?" I mean, yes, that heating allowance may well help. So would a cut in VAT, and so would a cut in taxes. But Sunak sort of said, "Well, we're going to save the cut in taxes until we've worked through this crisis." You know, Ed Miliband's a politician. He may well be right. He's not in power. He's part of the shadow cabinet. I mean, you know, it depends. It really depends on what the voters say, I think, actually, as far as that windfall tax is concerned, and whether he feels constricted by that condition. So there's lots of ways of looking at this, and no doubt they must be. I hope they are, because they're elected politicians. I hope they're actually going through all these kind of options and looking at them very, very closely. But as I said, if it's just about a windfall tax, it sounds good in the short term, but it will do nothing. It's not. Is it going to change the geopolitical movement in the world that's causing all this in the first place? I doubt it very much indeed. Is it causing is it going to help the speed at which fossil fuel companies, big oil companies, actually get their way towards being more green? Doubt it very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Our dependable Rosa Sodiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rosa.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. And good morning, Rufai. All right. So the Lagos state government is clamping down on motorcycles, popularly known as Okadas, as a result of the tragic incident that took place last week with the young man that lost his life. This is the umpteenth time that the Lagos State is going to be doing this. And I heard your comments, all three of you, yesterday on what's trending, which I love you guys, but they missed the boats on this matter. Let's take a look at transport fare from the Bureau of Statistics for March. And look at these numbers. Airfare, 46,000, now that, you know, that's off because of what's been happening in aviation, right? What's a one-way ticket now? But that's as of the Bureau of Statistics for March. Airfare, monthly increase 4.4%, annual 28% increase. Bus, intercity from city to city, 3,270, 5.2% increase, and monthly 33% year on year. Within the city for buses, 4.4 increase, 42% year on year. Motorcycles, look at that, the Okadas, 4.2% increase month on month, 45%. In percentage terms, Okada prices year on year have risen more than, waterways don't even talk about that, that's a joke. But 45% year on year annual increase. In absolute terms though, 395 naira is the March fare. It is the lowest of all the other transport options that Nigerians have. It is the cheapest. It is the most popular. Okadas are a data point for the Bureau of Statistics. They track it because of the number of people that use them on a basis. You cannot ban these items as much as you try. There's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of gridlock. The other options you've given to Nigerians, they're not working. They will use this. And this ties into the inflation discussion. Based on the information that we've gathered from what happened last week, inflation killed that young man. Why do bus conductors and passengers fight over change? Why? Because they're trying to retain as much change for themselves as possible, because there's less money to go around, because the money buys less, because inflation is rising. Oga or madam, give me my change. No, I'm not going to give you the change because I'm trying to hold on as much as possible, because costs are rising and the profit margins for these transport fare operators keeps going down. So you need to address that issue head on. The Lagos state government banned MaxNG, O-Ride, GoCada, and other ride-hailing services because of crime. Has it worked? It hasn't. Yet, those particular ride-hailing businesses have tracking services. If you order it, you will see the name of the driver, you will see where he is coming from, the trip will be tracked the entire way. Until this matter of productivity for youth, improved jobs, improved cost of living. Look, Tunde, look at your question to Michael Wilson just 2 minutes ago, asking about the cost of living crisis in the United Kingdom. Inflation figures came out this morning. I'm sure he told you 9%, 40-year high. Inflation has caused a fight. We did on the Global Business Report yesterday. We did a short report on Jeff Bezos and Joe Biden fighting over whether tax increases can bring down inflation. We have to go back to a U.S. Treasury report from 1944, 78 years ago, on this same matter. Inflation is causing a fight between the second richest human being in the world and the most powerful citizen in the world. Inflation is causing people to say Andrew Bailey should lose his job. Inflation is causing people to criticize Christine Lagarde of the ECB. Inflation is causing people in America to criticize Jerome Powell. This is the topmost issue facing Nigeria, Africa, the entire globe, and it is one of the main causes of crime that we're seeing in this. So as far as this ban is concerned, and as long as these numbers on your screen continue to go up, and which, by the way, there's a chewing gum I have, but there's a particular brand of chewing gum I like buying. I buy it in traffic. I won't say the name, don't want to promote them. Used to be 100 naira. Then it went to 150. Then it went to 250. Now, maybe because the car I drive, they tell me it's 300 or 400. I mean, those are 200-300% increases. Cost of living. If a cost of living crisis is going on in an advanced economy of the UK, what do you call it here in Nigeria? What's the word?
Inflation is going on, but you're driving a new brand of car anyway.
Well,
that's not the point.
are you done with your... I'll wait till you're done.
Wait till you're done.
And finally, still on the same matter. Lai Mohammed, the federal government of Nigeria put out a statement saying that Facebook should do what it can to censor IPOB. And they're talking to social media platforms right now. This still links back to inflation. It still links back to jobs. What is the federal government doing to incentivize youth in the Southeast to be more productive and disincentivize them from joining these types of groups, rather than punting the work over to social media platforms to be able to keep them down? All right.
Okay, Tunde,
who wants to go? Yeah, Tunde, you go first.
Yeah.
Our point, well, let me speak for myself.
Yes.
Wasn't about the banning of Okadas or GoCada, which you felt very strongly about when it happened here.
Still do.
Yes, so that was a separate issue. What the Lagos state government did at the time was ban Okadas from certain areas. There were restricted areas, ostensibly for security. My issue is the people manning those Okadas, and obviously they should stay within the restricted areas and not breach that. But who is actually manning them? Are they from Nigeria? Where are they from? If they are from Nigeria, where did they come to Lagos from? You're allowed to live wherever you like within the borders of this country as long as you're Nigerian. We have that right in Section 41. But as long as your activities are lawful, if they are not, then you have to be dealt with quite strictly. So it's not about that. But you're talking about inflation, obviously, it's the bane of everybody's existence right now. My friend reminded me yesterday of Ronald Reagan, actually, and his quote about inflation. Thank you, Lola. It's as violent as a mugger, as frightening as an armed robber, and as deadly as a hitman. And he would know, because you recall Reaganomics.
Yes,
he spent
indeed.
the first 5 years of his presidency fighting inflation. Yes, it's pernicious and what have you, but I will not conflate what happened to David, that tragedy, and blame it on inflation.
Yes.
That the factors underpinning that are far more sinister, ruthless. So I think it's like we should not downplay the tragedy of David. Let me just leave it there.
Very quickly. Very quickly.
Yeah.
The average, hold on. The average cost of an Okada used to be about 500,000 naira. Due to inflation, it's now 750 or maybe 1.2 million. Oh, wait, let me finish my point. There is no Okada rider riding one that can afford one. They are purchased by private citizens and leased out to these guys, the same way keke marwas and buses are. So if you want to trace back how to clamp down on these guys, including data issues we have in this country, you also have to go back to who the owners of these machines are that are leasing them out to these riders.
Very good point. But you confuse the issues.
Okay.
There are two different issues.
Okay.
Inflation is inflation.
Okay.
Banning of Okada here, this action that was taken yesterday, is in reaction to something different.
Has it worked?
No, wait. Societal breakdown.
Rufai, has it worked?
Wait, now would you let me? I mean,
go ahead.
Reaction to societal breakdown. The fact that people have the impetus to go for mob action. A certain kind of people. Listen, a certain kind of people, and I repeat, which should be profiled, which should be looked at strongly, which committed a crime. You talked about banning Go-Kada. That's a different issue. Did you ever see a couple of Go-Kada riders mob somebody to death? No. So you're mixing up the issues.
I am not.
Lotus. Inflation has been from the start of the world. It's even better now at this rate.
Better.
If you remember the 70s, historical data shows you that inflation was mind-blowing.
Where? In the United States?
Now, in the 70s, the same Canada a lot of people run to. Hope you know, inflation was going up to 20% in Canada. Interest rate in Canada in the 70s was over 16 going to 17%. But how do you deal with inflation? There are methods there to deal with inflation. Once the economy of the world cools off, inflation will trickle down. But let me tell you something. In the economy with the lowest inflation in the world, there's still crime. Rotus, this is a clear case of crime. People will do criminal things because they get societal impetus, because there's not enough laws to fight back, because there's always a knee-jerk reaction. Rotus, please, don't pee on our backs and tell us it's raining. I'm sure you would say inflation led to the death of Deborah too this morning.
Before you come in.
Very quickly. I know, but Doctor, I like to. I just have to make it. The mayor of New York. The new mayor, he was at the Met Gala. In fact, Arise News, Kachi actually interviewed him. They spoke to him. He was wearing a designer outfit from a Nigerian designer. The new mayor of New York put out a study because crime in New York is rising.
Yes.
The output of that study was that when the economy improves, crime goes down. And one of the biggest economic metrics that impact economies around the world is inflation. There is a positive correlation between, or rather inverse, correlation. It ends, but
yes, because it's a remote cause.
It's a remote cause.
If you reduce crime,
is crime nullified totally?
We're not talking about the elimination of crime. We're talking about
what are we saying?
We are talking about the increase in crime that moves in tandem with economic metrics.
Let's turn this into a Portuguese parliament.
Sorry.
Let's go to the issue of the clampdown on motorcyclists in Lagos, in the Lekki axis. The Lagos State Task Force said yesterday, as of yesterday, they've been able to arrest up to 123 motorcyclists in that axis. But it's not only in the Lekki area, that these motorcyclists constitute a menace.
Yes.
It is everywhere in Lagos. But the focus on the Lekki axis is because of the death of Sunday Daniel, the sound engineer, Sunday Daniel Obi, who was killed. It's everywhere. Now, what we're dealing with is the disruptive public transportation system in Lagos and elsewhere. And I think you put your finger on that when you look at the statistics, and you said it is easier for people to ride on the back of these motorcycles. Yeah. Because to go anywhere in Lagos, traffic is horrendous. It rained yesterday morning. I know quite a number of people who wanted to go from the island to the mainland. They had to shelve their trip. Because if it rains in Lagos, the city just shuts down. Even when it does not rain, the people have no option. People have to go onto the route. So the Okada, the motorcycle, or the other one that they banned expressly, the tricycle, otherwise known as Keke Marua, people use that as an option to go to their next destination. So we are in a helpless situation. And it is ironic that the first letter in the themes agenda of the Sanwo-Olu administration in Lagos is transportation.
Yes, sir.
And to sanitize it.
Yes, sir.
But up to this point, they've not been able to sanitize it. The other concern has to do with security. And I had, was it Tunu that I alluded to it, or was it Rufai, who was talking about persons of a certain extraction. Now, there is a lot to say in that regard, that there are persons from a certain part of the country who have dominated the Okada business in Lagos, and because of that, there are ethnic, religious considerations. But I think the police in Lagos State, they came out in this incident that just occurred in Lekki to say that, in fact, the man who instigated the attack was a Southerner, not a Northerner. They said so. They said so. I'm not in a position to verify that. The other consideration with these motorcycles is safety. Look, on the few occasions that I've taken the motorcycle, maybe when I'm running late to come to the studio.
You take it to the airport.
Sometimes when you get to the roundabout, the roundabout is such a problem, or you are going to the airport. I spend half of the time just begging the Okada rider, please, I'm a very important statistic. Be very careful. We practically ride the motorcycle together. I keep reminding the man, a man like me, you can't break my leg. Other things will be affected. But of course, my children are permanently banned from riding motorcycle. Okay. It's not allowed. You cannot jeopardize my efforts by going on the back of a motorcycle. Because if you go to the orthopedic
healthcare
hospital,
the
number of people, there is a ward in orthopedic hospital in Yaba. They call it they call it Okada ward.
Yes.
The menace.
They're not trained. You just hop on a motorcycle and start picking people up.
So we're talking about quarrel over change and people killing each other. These are some of the other issues that also need to be addressed. And yesterday I alluded to the fact that instead of outright ban, maybe there's need for regulation.
Yes.
There was a time they said these Okada people, they should register, they should wear uniform, so that we even know the identity.
And you can tax them.
Of the persons. Well, I'm not talking about tax.
Okay.
But we know the identity, we know where they live, we know where they operate.
Bless you, doctor.
And there will be persons that the state can engage with. But even the state government is handicapped. These Okada people, they have their own unions. They also contribute campaign funds.
Okay.
Now
I get inflation.
So we live in a very delicate environment where all of us are very vulnerable. And I will advise people who don't have the skills of how to ride Okada not to go and try it. It's very risky. It's not just about change.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Because what you have to do sometimes, you either hold the metal or you hold on to the man. If he's going to drive rough, the two of you, let the two of us fall together and let the two of us break bones. Nobody is going to come and break my leg because of it. But of course, that's not my usual mode.
Of course, understood, doctor. We understand.
I saw Minister
Facebook,
Lai Mohammed. Yes, well, Facebook is the most popular social media platform. Not just in Nigeria, I think worldwide, right? It's more popular.
Yes, so
and since Facebook also acquired Instagram, I think in 2012, they've had a very large following. The minister is right to say that certain persons use the Facebook platform to broadcast. Okay, I've seen quite a number of platforms there, and most of these persons are domiciled abroad, and they use it truly, as he alleges, to spew hate speech, disinformation about Nigeria and about government policies. I think what is good is that this time around, it's not just that we woke up one morning and heard that the Nigerian government had banned Facebook. The minister said he called a meeting of the Facebook team, and he held a conversation with them. And his major grounds is that his social media team, although I think some of the people they have recruited, they just abuse people to collect 100,000, 120, or 40,000 that they collect every month.
No, I think it's
half of their team, half of their team is made up of irresponsible and unintelligent
Very
people.
good, that's true.
That's my point.
It's to abuse people.
However, it is good that the minister is engaging and having a conversation and saying, look, even when our people raise objections, Facebook does not do enough to check the abuse of its platform, and that Nigeria is concerned that that platform may well, from what they have seen, being used to cause problems for the country. So that kind of dialogue, I have no problems with it.
Yeah, for me,
a blanket ban, as they did with regard to Twitter, affecting everything else, including our right to the freedom of expression, that will be a problem. So this approach is good.
No, for me, I completely agree with the minister. I think that we all try to ignore the neon, fuzzy, pink elephants in the room in this country, and it does us no favors. The fact of the matter is that there's a lot of tension in this country along ethnic nationalities, and it has to just be discussed, it has to be addressed. But he's right. And it's so funny. Recently, Governor Soludo said there's some gentleman in Finland who is the head of a factional IPOB group fomenting strife in Nigeria, living in a Nordic utopia and getting people killed here, and saying, oh, stay-at-home orders on Monday, children don't go to school on Monday, when Finland has the best education in the world. It really simply cannot be allowed. He's completely right about it.
So better economy in Finland and better jobs, right, than in Nigeria.
Back to your original point. You just had to bring it back to
better economy and better jobs, but when you look at the spread, what's the size of the economy, really?
True, but if you have jobs...
Is the Finnish economy bigger than the Nigerian economy?
Nobody in the Southeast will adhere to a stay-at-home order if they have productive jobs and they're doing well. That's the point I'm trying to make. You improve the general economy, these things will go down.
As if
that's what I'm saying.
The Southeast is a dead end. They've got productive jobs.
It's one of the most things. The Southeast needs to be an economic zone. It needs to be its own economic zone. It should be recognized.
Can we go now?
Okay, we need to go.
Thank you, Rotten. This was fun.